final set of races has in store for us, and this one in particular should be really, really exciting. It is the Welsh Sports and Saloon Car Championship. An awful lot of variety on this grid. And it's a nice change, actually. A lot of sort of one-make racing so far this weekend, and the mixed sort of class format that we have in the Welsh Sports and Saloons is something that will definitely give us a little bit of a different spectacle, that is for sure. So the cars then lying up on the grid, it's the Ford Sierra Cosworth of Jason Davis that's got the pole position. Alongside him, we've got Chris Everall in the Ginetta G55, although someone was telling me yesterday that does not have the usual V6 engine, but a V8 instead, so that's going to be producing an awful lot of power. Then we have got on the second row of the grid, Damien Longatano, who is in the Westfield. He's got a Ginetta G40 alongside of Gareth John. The third row is shared by Derry Davis in the Darien and Tom D in his Honda Integra. And then on the fourth row of the grid, Richard Jessop's Mini and David Jones in the Ford Focus. Already great variety there just across the top 8 on the grid. Then it's a Renault Clio of Colin Dunn ahead of another Westfield, this one of Lynn Morgan. Then we get into some of the sort of hot hatches. You've got Todd Garner and Mark Williams, Renault Clio and Peugeot 205 respectively. They're sharing the 6th row of the grid. Rodney Teague's Renault Clio is on row 7. And then Andrew Williams in an MG ZR, which actually runs in the same class as the Renault Clio. We'll get into those classes in a moment or two. Then on the 8th row, Alan Smith in the Ford Ka and the MGB GT V8. 2 more different cars you couldn't hope to find sharing the 8th row of the grid. Then the BMW 330 Club Sport of Mike Cook is on row number 9 alongside Andrew Barron in another one of the Ford KAs and Neil Thomas in another MGB. So a 19 car grid then, and 15 minutes of racing ahead of us. Now, in the championship, championships even, it is Derry Davis who leads overall. Now, the cars are split into different classes. They score points within their classes, but then they're all amalgamated to create the overall championship standings. So, for example, Derry Davis in the Darien, which is a Class D car, you can see it there, the green number 5 machine coming towards us. That is the championship leader, but joint championship leader with a Class BS car, Gareth John in the Ginetta G40, that actually starts 1 position ahead of Derry on the grid. So those two are joint first, basically, in the championship, but running within different classes. So depending on how well they get on within their class today, that will sort of decide which of them has the championship lead going into the second race a little bit later on. But obviously this is a 15-minute race that will see a lot of overtaking, a lot of changes of position, I'm sure. And multi-class racing always is particularly interesting because you've got the cars that make their lap times in very different ways that might actually over the course of a lap be quite evenly matched, but some of them will have more straight line speed, some will be better through the corners, some might have a bit more downforce, some might have better torque out of the turns, a mix of front, rear and four-wheel drive as well, and cars that span about 4 decades as well. So when I say variety, I really do mean that. We've got everything from the classic minis and the MGBs up to that Ginetta G55, which is probably only 5 years old or so. So, yeah, it really is a fantastic sight that they make as they wind their way around the circuit. There's the Mini, number 17 of Richard Jessop. Richard Jessop is running mid-grid. He will be starting in this one. I think it might be Jessop's first appearance of the season, in a season that started back at Mallory Park in June. Considering this is the Welsh Sports and Saloon Cars Championship, it's a little bit interesting actually that 3 of their 5 events take place outside of Wales. They have 2 visits to Pembrey. They went there in September. They're back there again for the final round on the 10th of October. But they started off at Mallory Park, then they went down south to Thruxton, which I guess is not a million miles away from Wales. Pembrey, as I said, in September. They're here at Donington now with WRSSCC. Their only appearance with the WRSSCC this year, and Pembrey then plays host to the final rounds, as I said, in October. So, field making its way around. They're being led by the safety car, which means I think this will be a rolling start. Normally, if the safety car leads the field around on the green flag lap, it means that they won't be stopping on the line, and that's to be expected, really. We often see that in sports saloon championships because, as I said, there are cars that will They're very different ages. Some of them will be maybe rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. They'll get better starts than those around. So you don't want a wildly different acceleration rate coming off the line from a standing start. So the rolling start just sort of regulates it a little bit. It is the Ford then of Jason Davis there on the outside, a phenomenal machine that is, which I think will be one of the four-wheel drive Sierras, I would imagine. So that car is going to be tough to beat, and certainly in qualifying he was the man to beat, but only by 9/100ths over the Ginetta of Everall. So this should be a fascinating battle then. 2x2 out of the final corner. Some of them are a bit more on their toes than others, but the race is going to get underway then. Down towards Redgate they go, and it is the Ginetta of Chris Everall that will actually sweep across from the outside of row 1, second on the grid, to take the lead into the first corner. The Westfield of Damien Longatano slots into third, and there in the midfield everyone definitely just trying to avoid any big risks through the first corner. The Clio there and the Peugeot together, two hot hatches of very different eras, and a Ford Focus up against a Westfield. I love sports saloon racing. You always get these really unique battles between cars that were never designed to race against each other, but that can produce brilliant excitement nonetheless. Down the hill into the old hairpin then, the leader's already up the other side, and there is your championship leader, the Darien, the green Darien of Derry Davis, chasing down Gareth John. Those two tied for the championship lead then, but it's all about, like I said, where they finish within their class, and actually that is where Gareth John is at a slight advantage, because Gareth was on pole position within his class in the Ginetta G40, running class BS, whereas Derry Davis second in Class D, because Class D has been bolstered this weekend by the arrival of that car that leads the race. The Ginetta G55 also runs in Class D, so therefore will potentially take points away from Derry Davis. So right now Derry is running second in class, whereas Gareth John is leading the class, so Gareth would take the points lead, but we're only on the first lap of the race, and you can see just how close it is at the front of the field. That Sierra, so much power, but it's quite difficult to get it down on the ground out of the Melbourne hairpin. Into Goddard's now then. The gap between the top two as close as we expected. These two, though, were 4 seconds faster than anybody else in qualifying, so it was always anticipated that these top two, the Ginetta and the Sierra, would sort of stretch their legs from the rest of the pack, but the question is, which of them will come out on top at the end of 15 minutes? The Ginetta, a much more modern car, has a bit more aerodynamic capability perhaps, but the raw power of the Sierra will keep will keep Jason Davis well and truly in contention out the back of the circuit. Once they get out of the old hairpin and they start heading up towards McLean's Coppice and down the back straight, that's where I expect the Sierra to really start closing in. Up the hill they go then. Still Damien Longatano then in third. Waiting still for the last couple of cars to come across the start-finish line, actually, which sort of leads me into another potential talking point of this race, traffic. There may only be 19 cars on track, but with a speed differential in qualifying of about 35 seconds between the fastest and slowest cars, not including the struggling MGB of Neil Thomas, who was some 30 seconds further off the pace. We do expect them to get into traffic before the end of the race, but right now we have a battle on our hands at the head of the field. Chris Everall going defensive here into the chicane, trying to keep Jason Davis behind him, but Davis with a much better run out of the chicane, looks to the inside, down into the Melbourne loop. I don't think that Everall got across in time to defend. No, he didn't. The Sierra is later on the brakes as well, and so goes into the race lead, going into the Melbourne hairpin. Can he get it stopped? Yes, he can. That was impressive. And now that smoke and flame belching Sierra is in the lead. It might be difficult to overtake. It's always harder to overtake a car that has more straight line speed than you, because most of the overtaking opportunities will come at the end of the straights, and if you're being outpowered by the car ahead, you're not going to be able to get close enough to attack. So the leaders go through then. The Sierra ahead of the Ginetta. The Westfield of Longatano is in third. Now what's going on between the championship leaders? The Darien is ahead now of the Ginetta, so Derry Davis is ahead of Gareth John. And it makes no difference for the points because they run in different classes, but that will still be a nice feeling for Derry. Even if he's running second in his class, he can still at least say that he's ahead of Gareth in that Ginetta G40. Nice to see more and more of these Ginetta G40s appearing outside of one-make Ginetta competition as well. As popular as those Ginetta Championships are, the cars, when they're sort of retired from use, can still have a racing life elsewhere, and that G40 is pretty competitive, even against some significantly more powerful machinery. So they head through the old hairpin then. 6th place, incidentally, is the second of the Westfields now, so that's Lynn Morgan from 10th on the grid. Lynn Morgan getting another place that time at the expense of number 42, Tom D, in the Honda Integra. Noisy Darien powers its way up through McLean's and towards the right-hander at Coppice Corner. You can see the way the Ginetta closes in through the corners, but then the Darien very much has the edge down the straight. So as frustrating as this is for Gareth John, he mustn't remember he doesn't need to be racing against Derry as far as the championship's concerned, but you know, drivers out there will all want to try and have a race, and they'll want to try and finish as high up the overall order as they possibly can. They disappear down the straight, the leaders come out of the hairpin, and the Ford Sierra starting to get away now. You can see of Jason Davis, but that car is, I would imagine, maybe going to be a little bit harder on its tyres. So are we maybe going to see the Ginetta come back at him through the second part of the race? We're 9 minutes and 40 seconds away from the end of the race, and the Ginetta still staying within touching distance just about of the Sierra at the front of the field. There is the MGB of Neil Thomas. Now that is, as far as I can tell, a pretty much standard MGB. It is a long way off the pace of those around, but Neil still enjoying himself out there. Donington Park Circuit is one of the best circuits in the country for a driver, and so I'm sure he is still having fun. The Mini in the background there of the Mini is Richard Jessup, isn't it? On 2 wheels practically as he came out of the hairpin, certainly 3 wheels at the most, really pushing that Mini hard. He's chasing down the 2 cars ahead of him, which we're seeing here. The number 62 is the Renault Clio of Todd Garner, and he's got the Ford Focus ahead of David Jones. Now David Jones running in the Invitational class this weekend, which is not one of the championship regular classes, if you see what I mean. The Renault Clio, though, behind is running in Class BS, so it's in the same class as Gareth John's Ginetta G40, and is running second to the Ginetta in its class, but there's quite a gulf between them, although the Clio does at least get past the Ford Focus pretty quickly there, so the Clio goes ahead on the run up the hill. Focus then losing out that Clio. It's a proper Renault Clio Cup car, that, which would have been racing at the top level of UK motorsport only a couple of years ago on the British Touring Car package, and a very, very quick bit of kit, a Renault Clio, proper mini touring car, and it really does handle exceptionally well, and you can see through the corners he's gapped the Focus already, so can he now close in on the Honda Integra up the road, 42 Tom D. They were all quite close, this group, in qualifying actually. Tom D in the Honda was 6th, Richard Jessup in the Mini was 7th, but only a couple of tenths slower. He then had 85 1,000ths of a second in hand over David Jones in the Focus. Then it was Colin Dunn in the Clio, half a second back. So that group, they're in a very different order now than they were at the start of the race, but their lap times in qualifying were pretty equal. So always the potential for there to be some good racing in amongst this lot. So the leaders have gone across the line again. A new fastest lap for the race leader Jason Davis, a 1:39.040. 4.5 seconds is the distance between the top two. Then another 14 seconds back to Longatano in 3rd, Davis in 4th, John in 5th in the Ginetta. 3 seconds now separating the 2 championship rivals. You've got Morgan in the Westfield, D in the Honda Integra, and everybody else just filing through now. There is the Peugeot coming through in the background. That runs in 11th place now then, car 180, Mark Williams. Going to assume that is not the Welsh snooker ace Mark Williams, but I'd imagine a fairly common name over in that part of the world. But he's running well in the little Peugeot 205, I should say. And then there, the race leader. So traffic is now going to start to become a bit of a factor. In fact, it already has looked, because they've lapped the MGZR, number 88 of Andrew Williams, who's a little bit further back than he qualified, actually. He qualified in 14th place, but Williams... Actually, no, sorry, he still is running in 14th. He still is in 14th place then in the MG, about 8.8 seconds ahead of the BMW, number 52 of Mike Cook, the 330 Club Sport. So Jason Davis then in the Sierra makes his way through the old hairpin. 6 minutes of the race still to go, and despite the really close times in qualifying, it does now start to look more and more likely that the Sierra is going to win, because the Ginetta just can't keep up. There is Chris Everall, who, as I said, was less than 1/10 of a second adrift of Davis' best qualifying time. But it was a truncated qualifying session, actually. They only got 4 laps in. The red flag came out a little bit early in the session, about 8 or 9 minutes in, so a lot of the drivers didn't get a proper chance to really put some quick lap times in. I think one of them must have been the Clio of Colin Dunn, because he's flying now, isn't he? He's cleared the Honda now, so he's up ahead of Tom D. That puts the Clio into 7th place. But the next car ahead is going to be the Westfield of number 78, Lynn Morgan. And Lynn, on the previous lap, was 6/10 faster than the Clio, albeit the Clio will have been getting held up in traffic, but actually it didn't really get held up that much. Its previous lap was within half a tenth of its fastest lap, so I think that is probably as good as it will get now for Garner, but 7th place ain't bad from 11th on the grid. Up towards the right-hander at Coppice Corner. Gaps just starting to grow now between that group, as they are at the front of the field. 8.7 seconds now between the top two. The Ford KA there gets out of the way of Garner, who ducks out from behind. Still not really getting away from that Integra, is he, actually? Nice to see the Honda Integra out there. There was a time about 20 plus years ago when the Honda Integra was a very, very popular saloon car in things like the British Saloon Car Championship, or the Production Saloon Car Championship, which ran for a period as a class within the British Touring Cars, and those Honda Integras were very, very successful cars before they were sort of subsequently replaced by the Honda Accord and then the Honda Civic, which of course remains a very popular tin top these days, with several one-make series catering towards Honda Civics as well. But the Integra, always thought it was a good-looking car, that, and it marries quite a sort of sleek shape with quite a good chassis as well. It's got a nice platform that handles well through the high-speed corners, but always was a very racy car. Ford Focus there behind, struggling to keep up with them at the moment. Let's have a look at the lap times. Yeah, 1 minute 50.3 for Garner, which is a new personal best lap, and was actually a second and a half quicker than Morgan in the Westfield up the road. Then a 51.1 for D and a 51.6 for Jones. So lap times definitely favouring the Clio now. Has Garner got time, though, to gain another place? I doubt it. 3 minutes to go. The leader has just gone through. Leader doing 1 minute 40s now. So they might get 3 more laps in, but I suspect they've possibly just started the final lap of the race. The race leader, Davis. Sorry, penultimate lap of the race. Beg your pardon. Getting ahead of myself. 2 laps to go then in this Welsh Sports and Saloon Car Championship race, and still a couple of battles then to be played out here in the midfield, as now we are definitely starting to see David Jones sort of getting back into the swing of things here. He started 8th. He gained a couple of places at the start, lost a couple in the middle, and now he's going to try and get back into that 8th place by the end of the race. He's closing in here, I think, slightly on Tom D's Honda Integra. Through the hairpin, there goes the Clio, and there you could see the Westfield up the road. So I think actually there might be a bit of a problem developing here for the number 78 car of Lynn Morgan, because that gap ain't 7.4 seconds anymore. Leader drops down into the hairpin, but I'll be watching the lap times for the 6th place car this time. They may even go a lap down to this car before the end of the race, which will be a lap away now. They're going to come out of the final corner with just less than 1 minute and 40 to go. So final lap about to begin then for Jason Davis, who didn't lead every lap from pole position, but once he did get the lead, has never looked back. That Sierra Cosworth Turbo has been in dominant form. Got to negotiate a couple of back markers. That's another lap that he's putting on the Ford KA of Alan Smith, and then he's got the Mini just up the road of Richard Jessup. The lap time for the Westfield, by the way, was terrible. A 1 minute 56.0. I think Morgan is going to lose 6th place on the last lap. There is obviously a problem for the number 78 car. There's almost a problem there for the race leader, as he caught Richard Jessup, just as Jessup caught Neil Thomas's MGB, right through the middle of the crane of curves, where you don't want to be having to deviate from your racing line. A few people have deviated there. Oh, that's the Integra. That was the Integra. That was Tom D off. So Tom D has gone off from 8th position. He was also set to benefit from the ailing Lynn Morgan Westfield, but D has gone off at the old hairpin. I wondered what all that dirt was on the road, and that is why. So another slightly scary moment then for Jason Davis to negotiate, as he comes now up out of the right-hander at Coppice Corner, less than half a lap to go. Are we going to see any more changes behind though? I'm fairly certain that we're going to have Garner getting ahead of Morgan. I reckon Jones was probably close enough to do so as well. Let's hope he wasn't involved in whatever happened there to Tom D, because they were battling for position at the start of the lap as well. But none of this really is of much relevance to Jason Davis, because he comes down through the Melbourne hairpin then, set to complete this 15-minute race to start off the afternoon's action here after a good early battle with Chris Everill. He's never looked back really, and the race victory is going to be his. Jason Davis, a bit of a lock-up maybe there as he comes into the final hairpin at Goddard's, makes his way across the start-finish line then and sees the checkered flag. The Ford Sierra is victorious here in the first of our Welsh Sports and Saloon races at Donington Park. Second place will go to Chris Everill. Chris Everill 6th in the championship as well coming into this weekend, and within touching distance of third, so a couple more class wins like that would go down very well indeed. Everill wins in Class D. Longatano eventually will come home in third place, but he's going to be a long, long way back in that third position. So there is the KA. Here comes the Westfield in third. It's the other Westfield that I'm interested to see though. Did it hang on to that position? Well, Garner had already gone past Morgan actually at the start of the lap. Interestingly, the previous lap for Jones was quite a slow one, so I suspect he was delayed in the Tom D incident down at the old hairpin. So Damien Longatano then finishes in third. Fourth there is Derry Davis in the Darien, and that will be second in class though, so that's not going to be a particularly good result as far as the points are concerned, because there Gareth John comes home in fifth and does win in Class BS. So John will now take solo ownership of the championship lead, and we'll see whether or not that remains the case in race 2 later on. You'd imagine it probably will. The Ginetta G55 of Chris Everill is going to be tough to beat for Derry Davis into that second race. Now there is Garner, number 62. So a bit of an up and down race there, but Garner does end up, Todd Garner from 11th on the grid, finishing in 6th. Then it's Morgan, so Morgan fends off Jones, in fact comfortably fends off Jones, because the focus only now comes through, so the focus really slowed at the end. Jones' final couple of laps were a couple of 2 to 3 seconds actually off his previous pace. So everybody now has seen the checkered flag then. It is going to be Jason Davis that wins the race overall in the Ford Sierra Cosworth Turbo. Chris Everill second in the Ginetta G55. Third place Damien Longatano. And fourth position number 5 Derry Davis. Fifth position for Gareth John in the Ginetta G40. Sixth was Todd Garner's Renault Clio. Seventh was number 78. That was Lynn Morgan's Westfield. Eighth position for number 51 David Jones in the Ford Focus. Then it was the Mini of Richard Jessup and the Peugeot 205 of Mark Williams to round out the top 10. Pretty much everyone gets a class win as well, it seems. You've got Class CS, which is won by Davis, Class D by Everill, Class BS by John, the Invitational class by Jones in the Focus, and then you've got Class BT, which is won by Williams in the Peugeot 205, and then in Class AT, which was the sort of Ford KA class, that private little battle went the way, in the end, by 18.3 seconds, of the number 13 of Alan Smith. So that's our first Welsh Sports and Saloon Car Championship race. They'll have another 15-minute race later on today, just the one-day format for this championship then, not racing with us yesterday. The same is true of the cars that are heading out onto the circuit next. They will be competing in the Zio Prototype Cup, and this will be a very different sort of race to that, I suspect. The lap times quite a bit quicker, and the cars will certainly look rather different, and there are some very interesting names on the grid, because some really good work has been done to put together a good mix of drivers here. We've got some interesting cars out there as well, with the very popular Pragas making an appearance on the grid, and one of them qualifying particularly well. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how they get on. The Welsh Sports and Saloons, though, are making their way through the entrance to Parc Fermé, and hopefully very shortly we'll be able to hear from our podium finishers. Not too much recovery to be done after that race though, so we should be able to move into the prototype race for too much longer. So they're pulling in third place man Damien Longatano. Ford KA comes in as well. And yeah, pretty entertaining stuff there from the midfield battle, certainly. But at the head of the field, really, Jason Davis never headed. Once he got the lead away from Everall, that was a fairly straightforward battle. Right then, Scott Woodwiss, once he's got his hair in place, he's going to be there to have a chat with our podium finishers then. So let's see what they made of our first Welsh Sports Saloon race of the day.
Sunny afternoon, and a great way to start this afternoon's action here on Sunday at Donington on this WRSSCC live race weekend. Great race from the Welsh Sports and Saloon Car Championship. We've got the top three already down here in Park Ferme, so we'll see if we can have a chat with them down in just a second. Just see a couple of the team for Jason Davis' Ford Sierra having a check under the bonnet to make sure all is well. And I think Jason Davis is just having a chat as well with Chris Everall, who is in second place. So we'll see if we can have a word with each of them. First of all, I think we can quickly move across. We'll have a chat, I think, with winner Jason Davis. Jason, it's a pretty rapid Sierra. Did the job, didn't it?
It doesn't go too bad for an old girl, does it? Yeah, no, to be fair to Chris as well, he was absolutely flying at the start. Had to work really hard for that one. But once we'd broken him and we got a bit of a gap, we could yeah, just pull it back a bit then and look after the car and what have you. But funnily enough, I turned into the first corner, had a massive handful of opposite lock and lost my power steering. So it's chucked the power steering belt out there somewhere on the track. But yeah, it made it bloody hard work.
Yeah, so it was hotter work than you anticipated.
Very much so, yeah. And I can't open the windows either, which is bloody annoying.
Just tell us quickly about the car, because obviously it's not obviously a standard Sierra Sapphire, so just what sort of things have you done to it? Obviously you've got an aero kit on it. Talk about some of the fundamentals of what you've done to it.
Yeah, we've worked hard. We built the car back in 2013 and we've just developed it bit by bit over the years, you know. But yeah, as you alluded to then, the aero on it, it transformed the car. Before we were quick, don't get me wrong, but after lap 6 or 7, our tyres would just had it, you know, they would just melt and we just die, and everyone would just reel us in and come by. As soon as we put the aero on, it just lengthened the life of our tyres and we could hold the best lap at the start and the finish, you know. So yeah, no, it's yeah, a lot of work to get where we are, but yeah, days like this makes all the hard work worth it.
It's not finished yet, you've got to do it again later.
Yeah, I know, and I hope it cools down a bit because I'm sweating buckets.
I think that makes all of us, but well done anyway. Congratulations, great drive. We'll see you later on.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Great stuff. I think we're running a shorter time, so congratulations to Chris Everall and Janetta and Damien Longatano in the, I think it's a Westfield that we've got there. We're going to quickly move on.